Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all around the world. If you're in Hawaii, I feel very bad for you. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the state of Hawaii right now. Um, Gary seems like he got out of there just in time, but not in time to make the pod again this week. Today we're coming at you. It's another duo show, just Ryan and the kid. Or Nostradamus and Bentley Danger, whichever you prefer, whichever tickles your fancy this evening. It's just the two of us. We're going to dive into a little too early projection of players that we could see taking a step forward next year compared to where kind of their status was at the league last year. Not necessarily have to jump to all-star or superstar level, but guys that we think will be in that next echelon or next tier of guys comparatively to last season. Ryan, how you doing this evening, bud? It's good to see you.
I'm good. It's been so long since we talked. I think it's been about 3 hours since I last saw you. It's really I struggle, when you're not around. So
I know
because I have no one to make fun of, and that's really a big part of my personality. So
that is true, ladies and gentlemen. That is true. Believe it or not. I think before we get into our lists here, if the people remember, last week we did redrafting the 90s, and you promised to put our rosters into the 2K machine and see what it spat out. If you would like to take that away, I think that I, along with everyone, am waiting to hear these incorrect results.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying initially I was just going to do a playoff 7-game series, but I decided to put them in a whole season and turn injuries off to see how they would do against the current NBA rosters. I gave you the Wizards, so I basically deleted the Wizards and turned you into your team as the Wizards.
Nice.
And I deleted the Rockets because both those teams are pretty irrelevant in the NBA picture for 2K last year, right? My Rockets went 81-1. and I think yours went 80-2. So pretty dominant regular seasons. And then I think neither team lost a game in the playoffs to meet in the finals. And then in the finals, it went 7 games, super competitive. I think there was only one game that was more than an 8-point differential. And my team ended up winning 4-3. And Dirk Nowitzki was the MVP of the finals. I don't know who was. I think Luka Doncic still got NBA MVP for the regular season, which is incredible. But probably because everybody on our team basically averaged 17 a game because there were so many stars. But yeah, my team won. Dirk Nowitzki, I think, pretty much just shot threes the whole time in the finals and made it tough for your 4 to chase around. Also, our teams were not 100% complete. Rasheed Wallace is not in the game, and Chris Webber is not in the game. So we had to switch some guys around. But I think those guys were pretty far down the bench, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, it was competitive and pretty close as expected. Shaquille O'Neal dominated for your team. I just want to throw that out there because Tim Duncan guarded him most of the time, and I think that's probably a pretty big mismatch from size-wise.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it happen in real life, and it wasn't until a little later in Shaq's career that Tim Duncan, aside from year 1 championship, but wasn't later until Tim Duncan's career that he really kind of took over as the dominant force in the paint that we know him to be. Yeah, so that's tough. You really hate to take an L, even if it is with a virtual roster. But I like you mentioned, Chris Webber not being there, I think really kind of swung things. Chris Webber, much better than Rasheed Wallace, my boy Spot. But, so be it. I'll put it into my 2K machine and see if we get anything different.
I think if we ran it 100 times, it'd come close to 50-50.
Yeah, I might have to.
It would be my guess.
I had to put my thumb on the scale there for that one. All right, so let's kick this thing off. Ryan, I'll let you go first. Okay. Again, we're looking at guys here going into next season that are going to take a step up in echelon from where they were last year.
Yep. All right, so I guess how I'm going to talk about what I thought about as far as how I looked at this, right? Because there's a lot of ways you could look at this. It's like, are these guys who are all stars like breaking out into that range? Are these guys who are like going to start? Are they going to like play? You know, like there's a lot of different breaking out that can happen, right? So all these guys kind of fit into different buckets as far as that goes, but I'll kind of explain that when I pick them. But I just want to say I'm not saying these guys are going to be all NBA or something like that. They're just going to make a leap, basically. Uh, my first guy I'm going to take is Jalen Duran, who Billy knows I love Jalen Duran. I think one of my favorite prospects in the NBA. He's still not even 20 years old. He doesn't turn 20 until I think like November, which is crazy because he's going into his second year and he won't even be 20 basically by the time it starts. Um, Super young, super athletic. But really, this actually is a breakout of a different player, and Jalen Duren is just going to benefit from it. Is Cade playing with him? If Cade is healthy, I can see the Cade and Jalen Duren relationship being kind of like a Lob City Clippers relationship. You know, the Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan. Jalen Duren's got a lot of DeAndre Jordan's like peak game in him. Super good, athletic defensive player. Still gets lost occasionally, but he can't even legally drink for another year and like 2 months.
Yep.
But a guy who I think is a really good rim runner. He's gonna be a vertical spacer, as people like to say, and a pretty good passer. He's not really a short roll guy. He can do it. There's flashes, and I think that's going to develop. But I think with Cade like opening up so much for him, whereas like Jaden Ivey, I don't think opens as much up for him in that two-man game. I think that if you're a Pistons fan, you have to be very excited about the potential of that offensive set over and over again for the next 10 years. Hopefully they stay healthy. But that's my first guy. I expect him to, be in the double-double range. He was close to it last year. He was 9 points, 9 rebounds, basically. But I think he's going to get a 5 or 6 point per game bump pretty easily. I think he's gonna play good defense. I think his assist numbers will go up and his rebound numbers will go up. And I think a lot of that's because of Cade, like I said. So that'd be my first guy. And I'm very excited to see how he turns out because he can play a long time with how young he is.
Yeah, for sure. I also am a big fan of his game. The dude looks like an Adonis. He looked like he was 26 when he was 18. It's just crazy, like 17, really. Just crazy physicality and athleticism from that dude. I like that pick. The only reason I'm a little hesitant to give my full support behind that is the James Wiseman aspect of it. Now, I think that Jalen Duren is going to be a better player than James Wiseman. But when you give up capital to get a guy who went that high in the draft, like Wiseman going second overall, I think they may feel beholden to play him a lot this year until they don't like what they see and maybe are kind of forced to play Durant. In which case he could absolutely take that step forward and I could totally be putting my foot in my mouth. But I think that they're going to be splitting paint touches there with Durant, Bagley, and Wiseman. But I really like Duren. I could definitely see him taking a leap. He's probably the best of those three guys.
Is Wiseman the odd man out of that group, like of that 4-man rotation? I think he is, right? Like they were playing him at the 4 in the summer league,
Yeah,
which was like weird.
yeah.
I don't think he was good at the 4, personally, from what I saw. He looks like a 5. That's
Yeah.
not really that good at that either, but that's like his natural position. So I think he's the odd man out, right? Because Stewart can play both positions,
Right.
and Bagley's a 4.
Yeah, I mean he likely is. Again, he's that number 2, excuse me, number 2 overall pick, and
Yep.
picks like that carry a lot of weight, regardless of the team that they're on. I could see him taking some Stewart minutes. Maybe they look to move Bagley to get him out of there if they don't like him, free up some of those touches. But he probably is the odd man out. He just doesn't seem to be that good at basketball, unfortunately for him.
He's got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
and he's trying to develop that 3-point shot, which I think is interesting. It didn't look amazing, but like maybe that's how he sticks in the league. Is
If he
he
could stretch the
develops that shot.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another positive note for Jalen Duren is playing with the USA Select Team, which guys kind of always get a bump when playing international and like Team USA ball. Being around so many good coaches and so many other good players, and also building that chemistry with Cade Cunningham over the offseason and like live game action.
Yep.
All right, so Jalen Duren off the board. I like that pick a lot. I like the
Thank
selection. I'm gonna go with a guy who is, I think he's a year older. I think he's 1 calendar year older than Jalen Duren. Western Conference team plays on what some might call the youngest, studdest roster in the NBA. The roster with the most upside potential, probably. That's Josh Giddey coming out of Australia. He's, I believe he's 6'7", maybe 6'8" by this time. He's only 20, right? So going into next year, he could definitely be taller. Last year, he averaged 17 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists on 48, 33, 73. Those are pretty good shooting numbers for a 19-year-old in the NBA, especially for a guy who's not known to be a shooter. Like one of the biggest knocks against him being drafted in the lottery was that he just can't stretch the floor and shoot the ball. And that, I mean, shooting 33% is not great, but like people were expecting like in the 20s, right? So for him to be able to even knock that down at like a 33% clip, and I expect that to go up with just the nature, the way basketball is played these days. I certainly think that he could get better. He played in 76 games last year and had 8 triple doubles for his career. 3 of them were in this calendar year alone. So just in what's that, 2.5, 3 months or whatever that they play in the second half of the season this calendar year, he had 3 triple doubles. The dude's electric. He can kind of do it all on the floor. He can grab rebounds and push the fast break. He can guard up. He can guard down when needed. He's not the quickest guy on the court, so he can kind of be blown by guards, but he's big enough to be able to hold his own against larger wing players. I really like Josh Giddey. I think he's a cerebral guy. I think that that his size affords him some special capabilities on the court to be able to pass over double teams, pass out of double teams if need be. And he's really good off the ball too, which is important because they have the best driving, scoring point guard in the NBA right now in SGA. So for him to be able to play off the ball and play second facilitator and still average 6 assists a game, which I expect to go up, it's just a really important skill to have for them.
Yeah, I think Josh Giddey is really interesting. When he came out in the draft, I think he was a little bit of an unknown with his shooting, which like has shown to not be amazing, but huge efficiency improvement from year 1 to year 2. Way more efficient. Like if he can get to 34, 35% from 3, that's a big deal, right? Because what is OKC building? It's like a team with like 5 guys who can like move the ball, can dribble and pass. You're right. If you can add everybody can dribble, pass, shoot, which is the major skill sets in basketball, it's gonna be hard to defend, right? With Chet, they're gonna be huge because really like they play Giddey almost at the 2. But he's the size of a 4. Like he's a little skinny, but like he's a modern 4. He's not that skinny. Super versatile team. I think that Williams gets a lot of love over there, which like I like Williams a lot, but he's I believe almost 3 years older, 2.5 years older than Giddey is. Giddey is, like you said, very young. A guy I liked a lot. One thing I wish he would do is I wish he would get to the free throw line a little bit more. I'd like to see that. He's just not. Your comment about his quickness makes a lot of sense, right? Because he's not getting to the line because of he's not blowing past people. He's using his body to go past people,
right?
And I think that is going to reduce his free throws. But I would like to see that get up to like 3 or 4 a game. I think he's at like 2 right now. So just getting to the line like one more time. I think that's going to make him so much better of a player. Yeah, I like him, and that's an up and coming team too. I think that's a team that if they end up as a 6 seed and he's a contributor, I would not be shocked. I wouldn't even be shocked if they're a top 4 seed if they just like blew development out of the water. So yeah, I like him a lot. It's just some minor things, but even if he never shoots, I think he's going to be a contributor.
For sure. All right, dude. Who's next for you?
All right, I'm going to take my boy, fellow Australian, Josh Green of the Dallas Mavericks, who Bentley has pretty much heard all of these people I'm talking about. I mention them often. I like Josh Green a lot.
You know what we should have done, Ryan? We should have made each other's lists.
Yeah, probably could have. I don't know if I would have put Josh Giddey on your list, but he probably ends up somewhere on your list. I think if I was making it, but yeah, I like Josh Green a lot. If you look at the advanced metrics, Luka Doncic looks so much better with Josh Green on the floor with him, and there's like obvious reasons for that. I think he shot 40% from three last year, which is a pretty big deal. He's coming into year 4, which like year 3 and year 4 are like big leap years for a lot of players. He didn't have like a huge scoring year last year. He averaged 9 points, 3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, but he shot 53% from the field, 40% from three. He's an okay free throw shooter, 72%. But I mean, just him and Luka together, I think is just such a great line. I think Kyrie probably adds a lot to that too, because Josh Green gives them enough size where they can play Luka and Josh and Kyrie together. They have just enough size to do it. They'll probably be a little undersized, but not like a massive amount. And I really think that the team at the end of last year started to realize that Josh Green was a huge contributor offensively. And they started playing him more because I really think they underplayed him at the beginning of the year. And some of the trades that happened obviously affected that too, right? With the Kyrie Irving trade, like allowed him to play more. So I think playing time, getting him more minutes because he only played 25 minutes a game last year. I think getting him up like 5 or 6 more minutes and being like a very obvious rotation piece can be a big deal. And I can see a 5-6 point jump, maybe an assist or two just from, maybe not being a much better player, but being a much more heavily minute player, where he's considered a big part of that starting five. So I'm excited to see him. I like him a lot. I think he's an underrated player, and because people see Luka and don't pay attention to him.
Yeah, no, I agree with your statement there about him getting more minutes. I think a common theme probably throughout these lists are going to be opportunistic roles. Guys just getting more opportunities than they have in the past because their teams see the potential there. You made a good point about Luka being a better player with Green on the floor. I think that's huge for them because they obviously want to run everything through and around Luka Doncic there in Dallas, and that's probably the right thing to do because he's one of the 5-6 best players in the world. Like you want him to have the ball as much as he can with Kyrie playing second fiddle there. And if Josh Green can kind of emerge as like the third guy that lights out shooter that they can spray the ball out to and be a hard-nosed defender on the other end of the court, I think that he provides something super valuable there, especially with all the capital they lost doing that Kyrie trade. He's going to have to take a step forward if they really want to be a contender in the West. So good pick there. I like Josh Green. Both him and Giddey from countries and continents that don't exist, but that's okay. So my next pick is a player who is near and dear to my heart. It's a player that I have watched play basketball countless times and who never disappoints whenever I get a chance to watch him on TV. Ryan may know who I'm talking about. He may not. That's all right. But this is a player that I will be watching a lot more of this year than I have in years past, and that's simply because he was traded to my favorite team this year. Is none other than Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones, I believe, over the last 4 seasons, I think maybe 3 seasons, has the number 1 assist to turnover ratio in the NBA. He just does not make bad decisions on the court, and I can only assume that's from his top tier college coaching that he received playing at Duke University. So last year in 80 games and 22 starts, whenever Jaw was out, he averaged 10, 3, and 5 on 37% from 3-point and 80% at the free throw line. Last year in the NBA overall, he was second in assist to turnover ratio, only to Monty Morris. But that's okay because Tyus is going to be getting all of the touches in Washington this year at the point guard position. He's going to play a lot of minutes, I expect, and those numbers. If you tell me those numbers double, I would be a little shocked, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't be the craziest thing, right? Like if he's a 20 and 10 guy, he definitely has the ability to do that in this league and make good decisions down the stretch of games. Running the 2-man game with Kyle Kuzma, spraying the ball out to Jordan Poole. And Denny Avia playing second facilitator to Tyus Jones when he gets into bad situations, being able to spray to Denny and kick the ball and swing and make second and third passes. I really like Tyus Jones. I think that he's been an underrated player in the NBA probably since the day that he came in, and he's been stuck on the bench behind Ja for a while now. And I'm excited to watch him have a team of his own where he's able to facilitate the offense, to run the offense, to make decisions on both ends of the court to get guys where they need to be. I'm a huge fan of Tyus Jones, and I expect him to make a leap this year and really thrust himself into, one of the 8 to 9, maybe 7 best point guards in the NBA. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I initially thought you were going Mark Williams there for a second, but until you said traded, and then I realized it was not Mark Williams. But yeah, Tyus. Tyus is in that weird spot with like the commentary about him, where you say he's underrated, but I feel like so many people have told me he's underrated that I'm like maybe he's just properly rated at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think he's coaches love him, right? I think that's a pretty clear thing. I think he's going to do a lot for the Kyle Kuzmas of the world. Kyle Kuzma really came into his own over the last year or two, and I think Tyus Jones is like a traditional guy a point guard who's going to get him the ball in spots, make it even easier for him to score. I think even like if he plays with like a Patrick Baldwin Jr., who I think needs a guy like that, like I think it's a good fit for a team that needs direction and needs a guy on the floor. They're not going to be good, but they need someone on the floor who can kind of wrangle the cats, as they say. And I think he's very good at that. And we could see a scoring bump too, because he's not a slouch scoring. Memphis looked pretty good when Ja was hurt last year. I think they were also missing some front court guys at that point, and Tyus really held the team together. So yeah, I like that pick a lot. I think he'll definitely get more national recognition. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people are going to be watching Wizards games. You and I will, because it's local, and also I watch a lot of games, and I know you do too. But yeah, I like him a lot. I don't know if I'd say he's the 8th or 9th best guy at that position, but like maybe after this year with the usage rate he gets, you might be saying that. So I don't think that's a leap. I think it's in the ballpark somewhere.
Yeah. What's up, Gary's dad?
Hey, Dad. How's it going?
Howdy. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, Jesus, Ryan.
Sorry, I'll stop talking.
No. We're just saying the same things over each other.
Yes. Two peas in a pod over here.
Yeah. All right. So Tyus Jones is that pick. We both I think expect him to be more influential and fill up the stat sheet a little more than he did last year. All right, Ryan, your next pick, please.
Yep, I'm gonna. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks again, Dad. I appreciate that. I like a guy who can see art and talent. You're a guy who can, and I appreciate that. Not a lot of skill, a lot of other people have. All right, so I'm gonna take a former teammate of Mr. Jones, who was a rookie last year. I think it's a guy who's gonna get a lot of playing time. Because Ja is not going to be there for his off the court problems.
25 minutes.
Yeah, which which is significant.
Mhm.
And guys are going to have to play. I think that this is a guy who has the positional versatility to not play the one, but kind of scoot down as the Marcus Smarts of the world are coming in to play that position. And though they play him at the power forward primarily, I think he can scoot down to the three and potentially even the two in some lineups. That's Jake LaRavia, who, though he did 3 years in college, played 3 years. He played Indiana State and then Wake Forest for 1 year. He is still 21. He'll barely be turning 22. He's already played 1 year in the NBA. He was a pretty young junior. Now, anybody who is watching this in the future, you're going to be like, I'm looking up Jake LaRavia's stats, and he only played 35 games and scored 3 points, and he's 6'8" and only got a rebound a game. He didn't play a ton, right? He played 11 minutes per game, almost 12. Didn't shoot amazing, but he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy, and that's why I think he's going to have this breakout is because them losing their 2 point guards and having to bring in Marcus Smart, who is maybe not the guy you want always having the ball, right? Like I think a lot of us would agree he's not your facilitator naturally. He relies on like scorers and penetrators around him, and I think Jake can do those things. I think he can shoot a little bit. I think he can pass the ball. I think he's big, right? He's 6'8", 230. He's a big guy. And can play the three and potentially I think even the two in some goofy lineups that I think they're going to have to play because Brandon Clark's hurt. Kenny Lofton Jr. is going to be in some lineups probably. David Roddy, like they're going to have they can't all those guys can't play power forward, right? Like they got to have somebody play the 3 and 2 and those other spots. So I think he's going to get more playing time. And he was a guy I liked coming out of the draft. I think if you looked at a lot of scouting, a lot of people were like, wow, he can do everything. And really can fit wherever you want him. And I think Memphis needs a guy like that in their current situation and in the future. It'd be nice to have some positional versatility on that team because I think they're limited in that currently with how they're constructed. So it'd be nice to have a guy who can move around. So I'm expecting a minute's leap, a game's played leap, and hopefully he contributes enough that when Ja comes back and Brandon Clark eventually potentially comes back, he is still in the rotation, and I think he'll be a big part of a team that wants to contend. And I think he has the experience to do that. So,
Yeah, I remember watching pre-draft coverage of Jake LaRavia and just kind of being astounded. I actually specifically in summer league when he was playing, just kind of being astounded at how big he was and how well he moved for like the size that he's at. So I remember him at Wake Forest, and like he didn't strike me as like a big guy, right? I was like, oh, like LaRavia is a big kid, whatever. And then he got to the summer league, and I was like, wow, he like is legitimately big and long, and moves very, very well for someone like at that size. I agree with the positional versatility there. I think they're going to need that because, like you mentioned, they're missing bodies. Like you're going to be without your starting point guard for over a quarter of the season. And then we just mentioned Tyus Jones, who was the backup, and he's gone too. So like they bring in Marcus Smart, and it's like, well, you play Smart, Bain, and then Triple J, and it's like, well, you kind of need somebody in between that 3-4 and maybe like a flex 5. It could definitely play down to the 2 if needed with lineups. And you mentioned David Roddy too, like he's probably going to play, or you mentioned Kenny Lofton Jr., excuse me, who is likely going to play. He's kind of a summer league guy, but like seeing if LaRavia can take that jump, and not even necessarily like a statistical jump, but just be able to fill in the cracks in that roster that they're going to see from missing bodies for a lot of the year. I think is going to be huge for them, and especially for him as well, like as a guy who's going to try to make it to a second contract in the league. And if he's able to fill into those roles and not even play to like an all-star level, but to play to like a starting capacity within the league, I think that benefits him mostly, but as well as Memphis. And like you said, they're a team that is expecting to compete this year whenever Ja gets back and they're back at full strength. So I think LaRavia is a good call there. The dude could be huge for that program.
Gary's dad left us a question here.
All right.
We kind of did one of these. We did do like a over under wins total. I don't know, was that like a month ago, three
Yeah,
weeks, a
something
month
like
ago?
that.
Um, we didn't do like one through 15 of every conference. That'll probably be in the preview of the season,
Yeah.
I imagine. We did an over under wins, which doesn't tell you exactly what that is, but it's in the ballpark, right? But yeah, I think in the preview show, once Gary comes back, we'll probably have like a here's who we think is going to make the playoffs. Here's who we think is going to be tanking at the end of the season. Though I think it's going to be a very competitive season, and we've talked about that a lot. So yeah, we do have something. We'll do something with that. Is my answer.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Hopefully by the time that rolls around, we'll have a little more clarity on James Harden and Damian Lillard, what's going on there. It's kind of tough to predict, where people are going to finish when two of like the 20 best guys in the NBA are looking to be moved. But we will for sure do something like that as the season gets closer. All right, so my next pick is a guy that you know very well. It's a player that we all watched in Summer League this year and was like, wow, where did that kind of come from? And then it was like, oh, he did all of this at Auburn. Why are we shocked? So I'm going to go with Jabari Smith Jr. Averaged 12, 7, and 1 last year on 41, 31, and 79, respectively. Played in 79 games and really, really struggled out of the gate. I think some of his numbers are lower because he was not good for like the first half of the season. He was kind of figuring out what the NBA game was like, I think. He also, I think, kind of struggled due to lack of true point guard there in Houston. And with Fred VanVleet coming in, I think you definitely see a bump in that position skill, right? Because Kevin Porter Jr. is a good player, but he's not a natural point guard, which is not a knock against him. It's just they were almost playing him out of position. They didn't have like a true facilitator on that team. And Fred VanVleet, for whatever you think of him, is absolutely an upgrade at the point guard position there. Jabari Smith Jr. was a stud in college. There's a reason he went so high. He was a stud this year in the Summer League. I believe he's playing for the USA Select team. Am I wrong in that? I should have looked that up before I started saying it, but I said it. If that's the case, I think he gets a bump for playing international ball. At least practicing against the guys that are going to play international ball and being around all those coaches. Regardless, he's going to take a leap forward next year, if for no other reason than him already understanding how the NBA game is played. Now, one thing that he may suffer from in next season is lack of touches, right? So Fred VanVleet coming in is going to get his points, right? They gave him all the money in the world. He's going to want to live up to that contract because that's who he is. They're looking for Jalen Green to take a step forward, which probably means more scoring. Tari Eason is going to look to take a step forward, which probably means more scoring as well for him. They have the Cam Whitmore, who, as we know, is a bucket. The dude can score at 3 levels. Likely will be able to do the same thing in the NBA. So this almost is it almost seems like I'm leading up to saying you stick Jabari Smith in the corner and make him a 3-point shooter, right? But that he can do so much more than that. He can run a 2-man game. He's not going to break anyone down off the dribble, right? But like Kevin Garnett didn't really break people down off the dribble, and he's a Hall of Famer. So like if Jabari Smith is able to take a leap forward in efficiency as well as the defensive game, like become a pseudo rim protector because they're going to play Şengün a lot, and he's definitely not a rim protector, right? So they're going to rely on Jabari Smith to cover a lot of the back end of that defense. I believe he has it in him. The dude is athletic as hell, and he's got a good head on his shoulders. So like I said, he took a small step forward, right? Last year, once he kind of figured out how the NBA game works, if he could just build on that going into the next season, he could be a much better player than he was last year. and he's going to get a bump from having a real point guard on that roster. And I expect Jabari Smith Jr. to be a much better player this coming year than he was last year.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the legend Jabari Smith Jr. as all Rockets players are. I like to hear my hometown team mentioned. I didn't put him on here because I felt it was a little campy, and I just talk about the Rockets all the time. But yeah, I think after the summer league, it's hard not to feel like something clicked, right? Second year players should be some of the better players in the summer league. Third year players is like, if you're bad in the summer league, you're probably not in the league anymore. Fourth year James Wiseman, like I don't know what's going on there, but yeah. So Jabari looked good. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think you kind of hit my opinion on him. I think efficiency is a huge concern, right? But in college, he was one of the better 3-point shooters, right? If he's 6'10", 6'11", he's just going to shoot over guys, right? Fred VanVleet should give him that opportunity to do that. And the team is more talented. He's going to have less to do, which probably will raise his efficiency as well. My major concern with him is he's a little stiff. When you watch him play, he's a little like up and down. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle, as I often say on this pod. I would like to see him kind of develop a game like to the basket. I don't know if he ever will, but his game might be the Kevin Garnett pull-up game, kind of what you're talking about, the mid-range. You can't just shoot threes. But yeah, he's going to be a perimeter defender. You think he's going to be an off-ball rim protector. I would like to see more flashes with that, and I think he's going to get that opportunity. I don't think he's an amazing off-ball rim guy, but I saw some stuff in his rookie year. And if he's 6'11" and like getting stronger and like more athletic, like I can see that being a thing. And he's probably like the fourth option at this point, like offensively. So he should be more efficient, right? If you're the fourth guy people are worried about. Dylan Brooks might say it's the fifth option, but Dylan's probably the fourth option at this point. But
Dylan scored 3 points today against Germany, so with 5 turnovers.
Yeah, that sounds about right. He has his bad games for sure. But yeah, I think Jabari Smith for sure. I think that if he's like some people are saying he's 7 foot. If he's a 7 foot 3-and-D guy, like everybody wants that guy, and I just think he's going to keep getting better. I would just like to see a little bit more towards the basket, just to have that as a option. The only concern I have is he is Kwame Brown's cousin, the pedigree. His dad did play in the NBA for like 3 or 4 years, but cousin Kwame Brown, who had a long career, but you could argue Jabari Smith is already better than Kwame Brown ever was.
He is. I can attest to that. First-hand experience.
Yeah. I like that. I like the shout-out. I think that's good. Well, I'm going to name a guy since you named a guy I know.
All right, I'm excited.
I know you know all these guys, but you know this guy intimately.
All right.
He's a guy who is known for the sheer amount of games he played at Duke. He's got to be in competition with Kyrie for Duke legend, based off minutes and games played at said university.
Yeah, there was COVID, so COVID, dude, relax.
I think Kyrie's got him beat as far as like important games played.
Kyrie played 11 games at Duke. Calm down, bud.
Yeah, that's. I still think he has some beat as far as contributions go. But I'm gonna take Jalen Johnson here, who is a backup 4 in Atlanta. I think he is figuring out his mentality. I think he's becoming more mature. Right, he's soon to be 22. He came out pretty young and had some maturity issues, which I referenced slightly there. I think he's very athletic. I think he's very skilled at his size. There's not a lot of 6'9" guys that can do what he does. He's got to figure the game out more, but he's a great passer. He can score near the basket. Can't shoot yet. Still a below average shooter. But but does a lot of other things. I think he's really good in as a connective piece where he gets the ball and he can get it to the right spot or finish, inside the arc. His step obviously is to become a better jump shooter and a better decision maker. But I think late in the year, similar to Jake LaRavia, Jalen Johnson played more than Jake LaRavia, but Jalen Johnson, the coach in Atlanta started realizing that Jalen Johnson was a big connective piece there. He was really good with Trey and Okongwu kind of as like a three group there. And I think he's going to get more playing time. He's going to develop even more. And I see a significant statistics bump because of that. And I see with the more playing time coming better development of his actual game. And I think we're going to see some of the flashes that everybody expected to see while he was at Duke. And we got a couple games of. He had some flashes at Duke. It just, again, some maturity issues. But I like him in Atlanta. I think the more they play him, the better they'll be. I think he provides a lot of versatility at the wing. Just gotta get the shot down and a couple other things. But I think he's a guy that is poised to break out in year 3 in his age 22 season. I think that'll be a good year for him.
Yeah, I'm obviously Duke guy. Love him, right? I will defend him for a second. That season was canceled due to COVID, so we don't really know, what could have happened. There were no tournament games, no postseason whatsoever, except for like the first half of a Providence Big East tournament game. That was weird. Yeah, I was in Utah snowboarding at the time, so I wasn't super locked in. Yeah, big Jalen Johnson fan. He only started 6 games last year. I think that kind of was inhibitive of his stat line because if you look at it, it's not super impressive. But you already kind of hit the highlights where like he's not a stat stuffer, he's a connective guy, and he has the ability to be really good at it. I would imagine he goes into this year as a starter. If I had to guess, what's kind of really holding them back is that Capella is getting so much money from them that they feel forced to play him, which takes minutes away from the other front court guys. But I think Capella's on an expiring this year. It's either this year or next year, yeah. So maybe Capella gets moved and Jalen Johnson sees a big jump in minutes. But yeah, I think everything you said was very good. You kind of hit the major points there. He's a really good passer. He's not the most efficient scorer, but that could be worked on, especially if Trae Young could ever, figure out how to run and pick and roll instead of just an isolation offense. That would be super helpful. I like the pick. Big fan of Jalen Johnson. He really kind of shone through at the end of the year last year. Even played in the playoffs, which is a big deal for guys in their developmental stages. All right, so my next pick. This one's gonna pain me. This one's gonna hurt a little bit because it's also a player that I'm acutely familiar with. I watched him play twice a year for 2 or 3 seasons in a row, and I also get to watch his little brother play twice a year. This is a player who only played 42 games last year, some of it due to injury, some of it due to trade, and just kind of like having to pass team physicals and stuff like that. I'm taking Cam Johnson, North Carolina's own. He averaged 16, 4, and 2 last year, 40% or 47% for the field, 40% from the 3-point line, and 84% from the free throw charity stripe. After the trade from Phoenix to Brooklyn, he increased his points per game by 3 points a game, 1 more rebound, and over half assist a game on only 2 more shots, right? So his usage rate did not go up a ton, but he increased it by an entire 3-point bucket, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you had a whole team increase all of their scoring by a 3-point bucket, that's an extra 15 points a game. So like in the grand totality of it, 3 points for one guy is like kind of a big deal, right? Especially when he only takes 2 extra shots per game and shoots 47% from the field, which is decent for a jump shooter, right? Cam Johnson is kind of a big body, right? Like he's not a like an overly muscular guy, but he's tall, he's long, and he's athletic, and he's also a very smart player. He puts himself some really good positions on the court. He's a connector guy, like on the fast break, like he'll get the outlet pass and push the ball up the court. And he I think will benefit next year for playing in an offense that doesn't, like, Brooklyn is so hard to predict, right? Because nobody knows exactly what they're going to do. They have so much draft capital from other teams, but they've also sent a bunch out the door. So it's almost like, are they going to try to win or are they not going to try to win? And I think very clearly their best player is Mikal Bridges, but there's a conversation to be had about who is their second best player, right? Is it Nick Claxton? Is it Cam Johnson? You know, like it's almost impossible to tell, really, because Nick Claxton, I think, is a very good player as well. But for my money, it's Cam Johnson. And I think that in a team where we don't know exactly what their future looks like, at least the immediate future going forward, I think that presents a unique opportunity for Cam Johnson to make himself valuable, not only to the Brooklyn Nets, but potentially as a trade piece again, right? So he just got paid. He's on a decently team-friendly deal. I think if I remember, it's like 4 for 108. So that's a pretty movable contract, right? Especially with the cap going up, there's going to be a little more salary flexibility. If Cam Johnson goes into this year and takes a leap that I kind of expect him to, I think he becomes a very, very valuable asset for teams looking to win. And if that's Brooklyn, then good for them because they gave him all this money and they have a borderline homegrown guy there.
Yeah, I think Cam Johnson's an interesting choice. I like the Brooklyn experiment of building a team of 3-and-D guys that are all like 6'8". The Dorian Finney-Smiths, the Mikal Bridges, like you mentioned, Cam Johnson. Yeah, I think his usage has to go up, right? We started to see that at the in the season once he was with Brooklyn after the trade happens. He's an interesting choice because he's a little old, a lot older than people think he is because he hasn't been in the league that long. He was like 23, I think, when he came into the league. Mm-hmm. But he should be like right at his peak, right? Like this is kind of his physical peak. And so I think that makes a lot of sense for this being a really good year. I think because he's a connected piece, it makes a lot of sense that Brooklyn, he should have his maybe best statistical season while he's with Brooklyn, just because, again, his usage rate will likely be higher, but as a connected piece, he fits in with the Mikal Bridges. Like he's going to get the ball and he's going to get the ball up, right? And I think that's going to be valuable for them with the way they're constructed, because open shots are really what they're looking for with that team. So yeah, he was a guy I thought the Rockets might sign potentially if he didn't go back to Brooklyn, and I would have liked to have seen him there as well. I think it's a relatively decent contract, and I think, like I said, he's in his peak, and I could see him getting close to 20 points a game, like pushing that, the 18, 19 range, which is a big deal. So yeah, I definitely could see it. It's really going to come down to where's the ball go to in Brooklyn, right? Is it Bridges taking a lot of shots? And I don't see him being like an alpha where he's going to just take a million shots. Right. There's another Cam there who might do that, but that's if he gets playing time.
Yeah.
But as long as that guy doesn't play, Cam Johnson will get plenty of shots.
Shout out Cam Thomas, baby.
Yep. Yeah, they play together. Cam Johnson's point per game are going to tank.
He's never shooting the ball.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're coming. Thanks for the thumbs up, whoever did that. We're coming up near to the end. I'm going to give what will likely be my last one. I'm going to take, I like my young guys. Cam Johnson's basically ancient in my evaluation of this, which he's not in real life. He's
NBA young, dude. He's NBA young.
Yeah. He could play another, 7-8 years easy, I think.
Probably the oldest guy on both of our lists, though, if I had to guess. Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones would be.
Yeah, if I went and looked at like my full list, yeah, he definitely is. Because I only went through like the last 3 or 4 drafts, so he would be like the oldest guy that is playing in those lists. All right, well, I'm going to take a guy who is pretty young, 20 years old. Again, I'll take a young guy. Didn't play a lot. He played 59 games. Played 17 minutes per game last year. I think he's on a very good team when healthy, and I think he is a defensive stud who just needs to get a little bit of an offensive game, and he's going to get a lot of playing time, I think, off the bench, and that is Dyson Daniels for the New Orleans Pelicans. A guy I like a lot. I think we saw in the summer league that he's a legitimately shut down perimeter defender, which if you look at the way New Orleans is constructed, they could put 3 lockdown perimeter defenders on the floor at the same time and try to get you to score, right? And I think when you're surrounding Zion, who is a pretty awful defender statistically, because he's so small for his position, right? Like he has limitations defensively. Those limitations go away offensively because he's able to control the flow a little better. But Dyson will be a good guy with Herb Jones and with Trey Murphy the third, and even Brandon Ingram sometimes is a lengthy defender and can be decent. And also I think Valanciunas needs some protection sometimes too. You know, not their interior is not amazing. You know, blocking shots, protecting the rim, that type of thing. So a guy like Dyson, I think, is going to see more playing time. He's a 6'8" point guard that can pass the ball. He facilitates really well. He's just got to have a little bit of an offensive game to be a threat. So the facilitation's a little easier for him. But I think just defensively, he's going to be a huge contributor. If they're going to bring him in and put him on the best perimeter guy, you know, when Herb is off the floor and Trey Murphy's not on the floor, and even sometimes with them, I think he's going to be in some death defensive lineups that are just going to give people so much trouble because you're going to have to rely on your post scores. And that's just not a thing a lot of teams are built to do anymore. And so I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see him get playing time. I wouldn't be shocked if he plays in the G League initially, just to get him some on-ball reps. But I think he's going to get, you know, a very short amount of time there if he's there. I expect him to play many more minutes, you know, probably another 5 or 6 a game, pushing into like the mid-20s. And I think that's going to obviously give him a lot of statistical benefit. But really, this is a defensive pick and his versatility to defend 3 positions.
Yeah. Admittedly, Dyson Daniel not on my list, but I don't hate the pick at all. I think he's extremely talented as a defensive player, specifically on ball, which is something that they lack in their backcourt. Trey Murphy and forgive me for not remembering the other name, Herb Jones. There we go, nailed it, first try. Didn't even hesitate. Those guys can guard down. I would hesitate to put them on a point guard running around, but they can guard, you know, 4 through 2 very effectively, as well as Dyson Daniel. So like you mentioned, they could just be in lockdown. It's like the opposite of the Warriors death lineup, right? This is like the death lineup, but for defense. Now the Warriors team had some pretty good defenders on it as well. But like, you know, Herb Jones and Trey Murphy can shoot the hell out of the ball as well. So like it could be pretty similar. Like if your closing lineup is like, well, he might be the odd man out there. I was going to say CJ, Herb, Trey, BI, and Zion. That would make Dyson the odd man out. But if you really, really wanted to go defensively, like you put in Dyson for CJ, and you go Dyson, Herb, Trey, BI, and Zion, and it's like, I mean, yeah, your center might be able to dominate, but like, what is that? AD, Jokic, and maybe DeAndre Ayton in the West. I mean, good luck, right? Like, Şengün, obviously, of course, yeah, obviously, Cat, but like, I feel like Herb Jones or Trey Murphy could guard Cat the way he's a soft body, you know. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like the pick. I think you're probably accurate that he's going to start the season in the G League, but I don't expect him to be there very long, if at all, really. It just wouldn't shock me if he does start there. I like Dyson Daniels. I think he's elite defensively, and like you said, he probably just needs more minutes and more reps at NBA speed. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick. All right. I actually, on my list of honorable mentions, I had Trey Murphy. So Herb Jones, I think, is probably already broken out, but Trey Murphy might be next up there.
Yeah, Trey Murphy is like one of the most efficient scorers in the entire NBA. I think he's a or a 50-40-90 guy already.
Yeah.
And that pretty decent volume. Like I'm of the opinion it's like, is he going to break out past that? I don't know. Like he's already so good.
Yeah.
I think he's underrated. I agree with that.
Yeah. Just depends
Breakout.
on if Zion plays or not. His usage might go up.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah. If his usage goes up, yeah, I agree with you for sure.
All right, so on to pick 5. I have 3 guys here I'm looking at, but I'm going to go with my favorite of all of them. This is a guy very near and dear to my heart. A player who I saw dominate in college. A player who at times was the most influential player on a team with the future NBA Rookie of the Year on it. Is none other than Mark Williams. My boy, Marky Mark. Shout out his sister, also a Duke legend. Mark Williams averaged 9 points and 7 rebounds last year on 63% field goal percentage and 70% from the line, which is a big deal for a center. He's pretty freaking reliable when you put him at the line, right? Which means he can play down the stretch of games and not get played off the court. He only played in 43 games last year, which I think was kind of a lapse in judgment on the coaching staff in Charlotte. They also were not trying to win, and he's one of their 4 best players probably right now. Maybe their second best player on that roster. Mark Williams, and Ryan and I have talked about this many times. I talked about him almost incessantly his sophomore year at Duke with that Banchero team. I love Mark Williams. He's a guy who's a dominant defensive player. He blocks shots on the way up. He blocks shots at the top. And then on occasion, he blocks shots on the way down, which is goaltending. But he still gets his hand on it, which counts in my book, right? He's a player who can switch out onto smaller, shiftier guys on the perimeter and stick with them the way that a lot of big men in the NBA cannot. He has a lot of, as Ryan likes to call it, wiggle. He moves extremely well on the court. And that also translates to his offensive game. Like he's almost money from like free throw line extended and in. And then if you get him anywhere in the paint elevated whatsoever, it's a dunk almost every time. Like the guy's a lob threat from anywhere inside the 3-point arc, just about. And I think that some of his offensive deficiency last year, if you can call it that, he shot 63% from the field. Some of his lack of scoring, maybe because he only averaged 9 points a game, was very much aided or hindered, however you want to call it, by the lack of having a point guard in LaMelo Ball who didn't play a ton of games last year, right? I think that if LaMelo can be healthy this year, they can run a 2-man game with Mark Williams and LaMelo, and help side defenders will have to shade to help onto Brandon Miller as well, who can shoot the lights out from outside. So that will leave a lot of passing lanes open for lob threats, for dump offs, for slip screens, anything like that to Mark Williams rolling into the paint or even to the short roll and hitting like an 18-foot and inside jumper, right? Like the guy, I think that he has the potential to be an elite big man in the NBA. It's gonna depend on what kind of facilitator he gets to play with for the rest of his career. And hopefully it is LaMelo, and hopefully he thrives in Charlotte being a North Carolina guy. They would love him there. I would love it. I might even get a Mark Williams jersey, and I'm not even a jersey guy. But I really like Mark Williams. I think he has the potential to make an all-defensive team this year. Potentially most improved. I'm a big fan. Give me Mark Williams all day.
Yeah, Bentley knows I like Mark Williams a lot. I'm probably naively am buying too many of his trading cards because big guys and defensive players don't typically do well in the market for some odd reason because no one cares about defense in the social media world we live in. But yeah, I think on the basketball court, Mark Williams is going to be a huge contributor in Charlotte. He's exactly what they needed because for some reason, LaMelo Ball at his size cannot stop anybody, which is like pretty crazy because he's like 6'7" and has long arms. You figure he could like just get in the way occasionally. But this is not a LaMelo Ball attack. I'm talking about Mark Williams, and I think he's going to be a huge benefit because he's going to, get those guys coming at him, and his length alone, even without the athleticism, is just natural length. Contests so many shots. He doesn't foul a lot because of that length. He's able to contest and not, go to the body and things like that you worry about with other guys who need to jump up and, block shots into the third row to do anything. Mark is going to do a lot of things. He's going to contest shots that you just are shocked that he gets a contest on, and it's not going to look pretty, but it's going to be super effective defensively. And again, like Bentley said, I think he's got some wiggle. I think he can handle the ball a little bit. A lot of people don't think he can, but I see flashes where he's got a little bit of a jumper and a little bit of a handle against fives. Obviously, he's not going to go past a little guys, but against fives who get him, in the top of the key area or something like that, I think he can go past those guys and finish if given the opportunity. And I agree, LaMelo Ball is going to activate him just like Jalen Duren with Cade. I think that's a huge deal when you're a guy who needs to finish near the basket. So yeah, I love Mark Williams. That might be my favorite one you chose, and that's over Jabari Smith, who I have a lot of bias towards. So yeah, huge Mark Williams guy. I like that a lot. I'm tired of all the Duke players, though. Honestly, it's just too many of them. I'm gonna rescind my Jalen Johnson pick.
You can't take it back.
Well, Cole Anthony. Love that guy.
Look, I took a North Carolina player, all right? So you calm down.
I know you did. Cole Anthony actually was on my list. Shout out to Cole. I think he has a chance to break out. There's just so many guards there. But I think he's going to be the guy in the rotation. Yeah, I had a list of like 20 dudes, and he was on there. So,
yep.
Yeah, great show. I think everybody who's taking futures, you should bet on future points per game if you can find that in your state. Everybody, we said take the over.
Up.
Yeah, if they said Dyson Daniels 25 points per game, take the over. This is not betting advice. Please don't do that. You probably take the under if it's at 25. But if it's at like 8, maybe the over's all right. Yeah, I like all these. I'm excited to see how a lot of these guys do.
Did you want to go over some of your honorable mentions?
Oh, I can, sure. Yeah.
Yes, please do. Let me do mine first because I don't think I have as many as you do. Okay, I could come up with 20, 25. There's 100 guys we could come up with. Yeah. But for the sake of the pod, let's just go over like a few of them, right? So for my fifth pick, I mentioned I had 3 guys I was looking at, and I took my favorite. Also on that list was Shaedon Sharpe in Portland. I think he benefits from having Scoot there as more of a facilitator than Dame was previously. And he's a freaking lights out shooter, 36% from downtown. I think that's pretty good. Jalen Williams, the wing in Oklahoma City, played in 75 games. He started 62 of them. I think that whole team takes a step forward, except maybe Shea, because Shea's already like MVP contender, right? I think that probably everybody else on that roster takes a step forward. And Chet comes back, so like just the whole franchise steps forward. I already mentioned I had Trey Murphy on my list. I had Jalen Johnson on my list as well. I had Tyrese Maxey on my list just because of the James Harden thing. Even without James Harden there, I think he's probably a better player this year than he was last year. But if Harden is gone, I think his numbers probably skyrocket. I really, really, really wanted to put Emmanuel Quickley on this list. He just is kind of falling out of the rotation with the Knicks. I think he would benefit from a change of scenery. I really liked Emmanuel Quickley coming out of Kentucky. I actually liked him more than I did Maxey. But that, not betting advice from me, but that's turned out to be the wrong choice apparently. And then I'm not sure like if you can call it a step forward because he won Rookie of the Year, but I had Paolo. I think Paolo's special. He's playing with the USA team, which, as I've stated previously, always gives guys a bump. I think Paolo is going to be a superstar, and he's just going to continue to get better every year. So I will pick him to take a leap every year until he wins league MVP.
Yeah, I like those. I don't fundamentally hate any of those. I think those are all guys. If you took an aggregate of all the people you listed, I think you'd probably hit more often than you miss on pretty noticeable improvements. My list. I won't go over everybody because this is actually the shorter list. I had a longer list.
All right.
I put Cade on there, Cade Cunningham,
Yep.
mostly because he will hopefully be healthy. I don't think his injuries don't look like something that's going to be like forever, like every year. At least I'm hoping not, because I think he is. He, you could argue he's one of the most highly touted draft prospects, outside of the Wimby world that we had in a while. It was like Zion and then him probably.
Yeah.
Um, Cade was beloved as a processing big guard, right? That was basically the opposite of Zion. But yeah, so I have him just because of the injuries. I have Jalen Suggs on here because I'm still on that train, but I think he's like the fourth guard in Orlando. So
Love
uh,
Jalen Suggs.
I think he needs a change of scenery. I've actually mentioned this to Bentley. I would like to see the Wizards go after him because I think he could, as a rotational piece there, and he needs the playing time.
Yeah, but he would be taking minutes away from Johnny Davis, and we can't have that.
Right. Yeah. Got to see what you got in Johnny Davis. Yeah, I just think with Anthony Black, it's a little bit of a concern with his playing time, right? But I like Jalen Suggs. I still think he's got a lot on both ends of the floor. I just worry he's in a rotation that's going to hurt him. So I'm hoping he gets moved or at least gets some playing time, or they consolidate that lineup somehow and he gets to play more. I have Jonathan Kuminga. He's shown flashes. I think he's coming into the year where he really needs to show himself. I think he's probably going to realize that. He's shown a lot of defensive flashes. Needs to work on the offensive game because really he's just a rim finisher at this point. But I think he'll get more playing time this year and look better. JT Thor, a little bit of a deep cut for Charlotte. I like him a lot. I think he was a second round pick that's super athletic, long power forward. He's not going to make a massive jump, but I think he'll be a contributor this year. Onyeka Okongwu, we mentioned a little bit. I like him better than Capella, and I like Capella a lot for years. I think Capella is serviceable, but I think Okongwu is the future of that team at the center position. Devin Vassell, I think if he can stay healthy, he's a guy that is probably more talented than Keldon Johnson, in my opinion, even though Keldon Johnson's been getting a lot more of the love over there. And they got a pretty good like wing and front court rotation in San Antonio. Denny Avdia, I think he'll get more playing time. Cole Anthony, I mentioned. Jaden McDaniels, another long wing I like. I also had Mark Williams on my list. I also had Trey Murphy on my list as well, even though I then said I'm not sure about Trey Murphy. He was on my list as well.
Andrew took his teammate.
Yeah. Tari Eason.
Yeah.
I think a guy I like a lot. I was biased. Nikola Jovic. I think if he can get the playing time, he's going to put up some scoring numbers and probably rebound. He'll be a big four. There's some defensive concerns, so it's possible Miami just doesn't play him because of that.
He's just Kevin Love 10 years ago.
Yeah, just Kevin Love. Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Ryan Rollins, who were traded to the Wizards, I think they're going to get a chance to show. I actually like Ryan Rollins more than I like Patrick Baldwin Jr. I think Rollins could be like a seventh guy, like off the bench that can score.
He's pretty explosive.
Yeah, he went to Toledo, so like no one like saw him play, but he looks good. And Patrick Baldwin Jr. I think is going to be like a 3 and hopefully a D guy. I think, and if you can get that, that's pretty good. EJ Liddell, he tore his ACL basically right after he was drafted. I think he will be a G League guy, but will be a rotation piece with the Pelicans by the end of the year. And then Jabari Walker, who I like a lot in Portland. He's a really good 3-point shooter. He was a very late second round pick. I think he was like 58, but very efficient defensive player. I think that's something as that team is rebuilding they'll want. Because they're kind of in between two teams right now. So I think by the end of the season, they'll be playing too. I know you did the EJ Liddell, you don't know, but I had EJ Liddell as my 20th prospect in that draft. And he went like 48 or something like that. I like him a lot out of Ohio State. So I think I know that it's hard for him to get on the floor.
I also really liked EJ Liddell. as a prospect. This probably just is not the exercise for him, right? Like breakout kind of
Well,
guy.
he's
Like,
going to break out because he plays. He didn't play last year.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm fixing to break out in season 18 of Apex too, right? Like it just started yesterday. Calm down here.
Proud of you.
I mean, I really like DJ Liddell. Don't get like I was a fan of his game. Obviously I watched him at Ohio State. I thought he was very good.
It's all right.
But,
you hate it. I get it.
No, I don't hate. I just don't think it's the pick for this exercise.
Yeah, that lineup stuff. But I think there might be, if there's injuries, he's gonna get to play, right? Like
for
the
sure.
three in the
Yeah,
fourth.
when Zion goes out,
and that team is in Evan. Yeah, and Brandon Ingram is always hurt every year, like for like 20 games. It's just I think he'll get some playing time.
Did kind of a side note here? Did you see the people that were saying that Brandon Ingram is nearing 30 and that he's being outshined by younger stars in the NBA, such as Jason Tatum?
Who said that?
Jason Tatum is 26. Brandon Ingram is 25.
25. Yeah. I was about to say Brandon Ingram's not that old.
No,
he came in the league at 19. So.
Yeah, I just thought it was super funny because people were like, "Oh yeah, he's been in the league forever. He must be nearing 30." It's like, actually, he's 25.
I've been expecting Brandon Ingram to make a leap since like 2019. I think he's been like the same guy since like 2019, pretty much.
He was much better this past year, I think, as a facilitator.
Yeah, that's true. He has added that to his game. Yeah, I agree with that. It's just scoring. It's like every year I'm like, it's just the same guy.
Which is very, very good. He's an incredible ball player.
Yeah,
he just is probably not your number one on a championship team.
No, I don't think so. Unless he makes a leap very soon.
Yeah, he can be the one on a playoff team, but he's not going to be the one on a championship team, which is what they're hoping Zion is.
Yeah. I like that team.
Same.
I get that's another team, but they were the 4th seed. I'd be like, yeah, sure.
They were the first. They were the 1st seed in the West in January.
Yeah. As long as even when they're not healthy, they're pretty good. So I can imagine them being healthy, what that would look like.
Yeah. Shout out Willie Green.
I agree with you. Yeah.
All right. So that kind of concludes what we were going over today. Just a recap. You went with Jalen Duren, however you want to say it. Josh Green, Jake LaRavia, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels. I went Josh Giddey, Tyus Jones, Jabari Smith, Cam Johnson, and Mark Williams. Unsolicited gambling advice. Please do not take it. Bet the over on their points per game, folks. I know we've kind of derailed here at the end a little bit, but Ryan, do you have any closing comments here about these lists or any unsolicited gambling advice?
No, I don't give gambling advice, mostly because I lose all my own money doing that, so I don't want anyone else to have to suffer through that. I think what we're seeing, I just want to make a comment about this year. I think we're seeing that the league is too talented. There's guys that are like the 11th guy on a lot of teams that should be in a rotation somewhere. And clearly we need like at least 1 or 2 more franchises to and there's a lot of guys in Europe and Turkey and these places, right, that are playing and are probably NBA caliber, like into the bench guys, but they're not getting the shot because there's just not very many spots there, right? Those are being left for like developmental guys. I'm excited about this year, and I'm excited that the parity, I think, is going to happen this year, and there's not going to be a dominant team. And I think that's going to show the league that they probably should be expanding sooner rather than later and trying to push that forward. I would like to see that. I would like to see Seattle get a team, and whoever else are going to get one too. So has nothing to do with the pod, but that's my comment for today.
Hey, we take it. I think it might be the worst kept secret in NBA circles that Vegas and Seattle will be getting a team in the near future. And when that does occur, we will be back on here speaking to the people about the upcoming expansion draft, the rosters once they're finalized, as well as those teams over unders, because Vegas, of course, will be heavily leveraged in that market. All right. Thank you all for tuning in today. We appreciate the interaction, the questions, all of the good talk back and forth. For Ryan and myself, y'all have a good week. We will see you same bet time, same bet channel. 2 up, 2 down. Ryan's going to Atlanta next week, so he will potentially not be here.
Yeah, I might not be here. Peace up, A-Town down.
Yeah, if Gary managed to survive Hawaii, he may be back. If not, I might be doing a solo pod for the people. So y'all stay tuned for that. We appreciate you guys.
Good spot to end it.